Hi, this is Chris from needlepointers.com, and I'm here today to share with you a new table runner tutorial that uses the Accuquilt Hunter's Star block onboard die. I used Electric Quilt 8 to try out many different versions of this table runner before I came up with this layout. I decided to use 4 fabrics, 2 fabrics for the stars, and then 2 fabrics for the background. For the background, I have used 2 light fabrics like white and cream. I paired the cream with the darker star fabric and the lighter star fabric with the white. This provides good contrast so the star fabrics don't get lost with the background. You may notice that this coloring is slightly different than the traditional Hunter Star block colors, which only use 2 fabrics. I decided to use 2 light colors for the background fabrics. In designing this pattern, I didn't like the look of the partial stars on the edges of the table runner. So I swapped the fabrics on the corners so they match the background fabric. The pieces are still there, they just blend in. By making this change, the Hunter Star is in the center of the block and it stands out a lot more. This pattern and tutorial will show you how to cut the pieces for the Hunter Star table runner using your Accuquilt Go and the Hunter Star block onboard die. I'm sorry, but I don't have a version of this table runner that doesn't use Accuquilt. I have another full video and photo tutorial on how to assemble and iron the traditional Hunter Star block. You can find a link to that video in the description section. We will be ironing these blocks in the same way as the traditional blocks, but because these blocks use the white and the cream fabric for the background, the rule is not just iron to the dark. If you look at the original Hunter Star block, we would always iron towards the dark fabrics. So for our new layout, we just need to assign which of our fabrics are dark and which is light. So for this fabric, we will say the purple flowers and the white fabric are our darks. For your table runner, just pick one of the fabrics of the star to be the dark fabric and the opposite background fabric to be the other dark fabric. When you're ironing, since we are replacing these edge stars with the background fabric, treat these like the star fabric attached to the unit. So for the yellow star block, I will iron the seams like both diamond pieces are yellow. So follow along with this video or click the link in the description of this video to find our written photo tutorial for this Hunter Star table runner. We will also have links to purchase supplies for this project like the Hunter Star die. You can support us to keep making more videos and tutorials like this one by purchasing supplies through our links. The supplies do not cost you anything more, but we get a commission for referring you to make the purchase. We do appreciate every purchase. So let's get started with this table runner project. What you need to make the Hunter Star table runner: an Accuquilt Go cutter, a Go Me, Go Big, or Go Electric will all work. The Accuquilt Go Hunter Star block on board die. Optionally, you can use a 1-inch strip die and a 1.5-inch strip die to cut the borders. But if you don't have those, you can easily cut the strips you need. A 1/2 yard of dark fabric for the star and the outer border. A 1/2 yard of the light fabric for the star and the inner border. 3/4 of a yard of both white and cream fabrics for the backgrounds. You will also need 3/4 of a yard of fabric for the backing, white or neutral thread, a sewing machine with a 1/4-inch foot attached. The 1/4-inch foot is optional, but it does make it a lot easier, and scissors. To create the Hunter Star blocks, for each of the 3 blocks we need to cut 4 layers of each fabric. Prepare the fabrics by cutting the following strips from the width of fabric. My calculations for the number of strips assumes that the width of your fabric is around 42 to 43 inches wide. Cut one 4.5-inch strip from each of the dark and the light star fabric. These strips should be cut in half so you have 2 21 to 22-inch pieces. Cut 2 10.5-inch strips from the cream and the white background. For the borders, cut 3 1-inch width of fabric strips from the light fabric for the star. If you're using a 1-inch strip cutting die, you cut one piece 3.5 inches wide to use in the cutter. Cut 3 1.5-inch with the fabric strips from the dark fabric for the star. If you're using a 1.5-inch strip cutting die, cut one piece 5 1/4 inches wide. The Hunter Star block is created from 4 6.5-inch blocks. Those 6.5-inch blocks are then assembled into the final finished 12.5-inch block. So the finished size of the Hunter Star block is 12 inches once it's sewn into a quilt or table runner. The really nice thing about the Hunter Star die is that it cuts off all of the dog ears from the pieces for you. So there's no need to trim small points of fabrics off of each piece after assembly. I will start by cutting the 2 diamonds for the stars. The sections A and AR are the shapes of the stars. These 2 sections of the die are exactly the same shape. For the table runner, I will need 12 diamonds from each of the star fabrics. Take one of the strips and fan fold it to 6 layers across the A section of the die. Make sure you're covering the entire A portion of the die completely, and the selvage of the fabric should align with the long edge of the die. So here I have 2, 4, and 6 layers, and it's completely covering the A section of this die. I'm going to do the same with this fabric and the AR section of the die. So there's the 6 layers of this other fabric, and it's completely covering the AR section of the die. And notice that I have my extra going off this way, and that's so that when it cuts, it will cut there and it won't. If it was going this way, I would end up getting these cuts into my extra fabric. Place the mat over top of the die and then send it through the cutter. So there are my first 6 of each fabric cut. Cut the second diamond fabrics in the same way. So then I'll have 12 diamonds of each color. Next, we'll cut the background fabrics. When we cut these, we will end up with the A piece extra. So I cut them and I save them aside for another project or a scrappy quilt. So take one of the background strips and fan fold it across the whole die. Make sure that your selvage is running the same direction as the long side of the die. Remember to only have 6 layers at a time. We need to cut 12 layers of each fabric for the 3 blocks that we're making for this table runner. Put the cutting mat on the die and send it through. I'll be back after I finish cutting the background fabrics. If you have the correct size strip cutters, use them to cut out the border strips. Otherwise, you can use your rotary cutter and cutting mat to cut these strips. So here you can see I have all my fabrics cut for my table runner. Next, let's start to assemble the 6.5-inch blocks. To make the Hunter Star block for this table runner, assemble 12 6.5-inch blocks. All 12 blocks must be assembled identically, or the star fabrics will not alternate correctly when you put the 12.5-inch blocks together. Each block is assembled by sewing together the middle strips first. Then the larger triangle is added to each strip. The 2 sections are then sewn together. All the seams of this block are 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you have a 1/4 inch foot on your machine, it is recommended to use this foot to ensure you have a consistent 1/4 inch seam throughout. Thread your machine with a neutral color thread, white or cream. Set your stitch length to its default setting. I suggest that you chain piece the sections together. It will make it go much quicker, and then you will also be consistent in sewing your pieces together. I won't show every step in this tutorial, but if you need a more detailed tutorial on assembling the Hunter Star block, please visit our other tutorial. The first step is to sew together the star diamonds to the center strips like this. Note that one of your star fabrics with the pattern is on one side and the other one is on the other side of the center strip. So for one set, sew the colored diamond to the right side of the strip and the matching background color to the left side. The second set needs to be sewn with the colored diamond on the left side and the matching background on the right side. Notice how all the edges match up. This makes it easy to get your points aligned when we assemble the final block. If it looks like this, where the point is sticking up above the edge, then that is not correct. Flip your piece around 180 degrees and it will match up. So you should have flat, flat, and flat. I'll be back once I've sewn all of these together. Ironing is very important for this block. If you iron the seams, as I suggest, the seams will lock together as you sew the pieces to one another. This will help you have your points lined up and near perfect to perfect block. This ironing will also help keep the bulk down where all of the points of the star come together. The general rule for the Hunter Star block is to iron towards the dark fabric. We've picked our two dark fabrics at the beginning, so as long as you consistently iron in the same direction, the blocks will interlock together. I picked the purple with the flowers and the white background to be the fabrics that I iron towards. So for the strips with the purple flower fabric, I iron both seams towards the diamond fabric. For the strips with the yellow diamonds, I will iron both seams towards the center or the white fabric. Press them all nicely, as this will help with the assembly as we move along. The next step is to add on the triangles. So take each triangle piece with the matching background fabric and sew it onto the trapezoid piece, matching up the edges like we did before. So as you can see, this edge matches up and these two sides line up with the sides of the trapezoid piece. Sew with your 1/4 inch seam. So I'll be back after I've sewn all of the triangles onto the piece. As in the previous steps, press the seam towards the purple flowers and the white background. Next, sew the two triangle sections together along the long edges of the trapezoid piece. So I'll put these together, and this is when our interlocking seams start to come to play. Since the seams are ironed in opposite directions, there's a small ridge on each seam, and when you place them together, they kind of lock together. So lock those seams together and sew across this seam. Iron the last seam in the direction of the white triangle. Notice that all three of these seams all face in the same direction. 4 of these sections make the finished block. Lay your finished 6.5 inch squares in the Hunter Star block layout. Once you have them in the correct layout, flip the right side of the block on top of the left side of the block. Sew the seam on the right side of the block. Before you sew the seam, make sure your seams are interlocking together so that your points will match up. Pin this to hold it in place and then sew a seam with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. After you've sewn together all of the half blocks, press the seam towards the background fabric you selected as your dark fabric. Next, put the last 2 sections together to make your final 12.5 inch block. If you followed our ironing instructions, the seams in the center will interlock together. This will make all of your star points line up correctly. Definitely pin these 2 pieces together and sew across with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. To reduce the bulk in the center of the star, we will swirl the seam. We already have the start of the swirled seam because we've ironed this and this seam in opposite directions. The first step is to pick open the seam allowance for the second to the last seam that you sewed. Once you've done that, then you're going to iron these 2 seams in opposite directions and they're going to follow so that this goes in a circle. So this seam should open up, and I'll push this one this direction, and this one is going to go that direction. So they're opposite directions. And you'll see kind of like a little swirl in the center. And this swirled fabric is much flatter than the fabric would have been if we just ironed the whole seam to one side or the other. So iron the seam, and notice this is going this way and this one's going this way. And all of them are following this seam, this seam, this seam, and this seam all face each other, kind of going in a circle. Iron that flat from both sides. And this really reduces the bulk in the center of the star. So now our 3 hunter star blocks are complete. Lay the 3 blocks side by side and then sew them together on the 2 seams. The seams on the side should interlock together, just like all the other seams. Once you're done sewing the seams together, iron the seams open. So here I have my finished center with the star blocks. The next step is to add on the borders. We have a 1-inch border and a 1.5-inch border to add on to this table runner. Start with the 1-inch border and take one of your strips and sew it to each of the short ends of the table runner. Iron the seam, then take the 2 longer strips and sew those to the 2 long edges of the table runner. Do the same process for your 1.5-inch border. I'll be back after I finish sewing on the borders. Next, pick out a backing and batting and cut them to size. The batting you want to cut to the same size as your table runner top, and that should be about 15 inches by 39 inches. For the backing, cut it 4 inches wider and longer than your table runner top. This is because we're going to use a fold over binding, and we need some extra around the whole table runner so that we can fold it over in the end. I've laid my backing face down, my batting on top, and then my table runner on top of the batting right side up. Smooth all the layers out and have your batting and table runner centered as close as possible on the backing. You need to have at least 1 inch on every side. Once you have the layers, pin them together or use your favorite basting method. This is another table runner that I made with this pattern. For the quilting, I decided to use straight lines. The lines are about 5/8 of an inch from each other. And what I did was, for between each of these blocks, I made a square, and then I made a second square. And I decided to only do the 2 squares. So then, to follow the same pattern, I put some lines on the sides also. So there's lines here and here. And there's more squares. And then the lines continue around each of the stars. I also did a line of stitching across this way and across this way. So I'll be back after I've quilted my layers together. Okay, I'm back now and I've quilted the top. I decided to put lines starting a 1/2 inch from the center and a 1/2 inch across the entire top, both ways. And then for just the sections between the blocks in the middle, I did the same thing where I have from this first seam 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch, and then a 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch. So I have 4 lines going this way, here and here. I also used a variegated yellow thread in my quilting. I've also trimmed the backing of the table runner to be 1 inch beyond the sides of the top of the table runner all the way around. And I will use this to do a fold over or self-binding method. To do the self-binding, fold the backing up 1/2 an inch and iron it all the way around and fold another 1/2 an inch to fold it up. Do this all the way around and clip to hold the binding in place. To get mitered corners, folding your sides like that, then open it up, fold the corner in, trim out some of this corner. So there I trimmed off the corner. Fold those sides in again. Fold it over, but we want to make sure that raw edge gets covered up. Fold up the side and fold up the other side. We have a tutorial on doing the self-bind method, so if you would like to see a more detailed tutorial on self-binding, please visit the link in the description of the video. So I'll be back after I finish binding this table runner. So here's my finished table runner. I really like how this one turned out. If you'd like a step-by-step written tutorial on how to make this table runner, please click the link in the description of this video to go to our website. On our website, we will have the instructions, plus links to where to purchase the die needed for this project and other supplies for this project. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make this Hunter Star table runner. Subscribe to our channel so you won't miss future videos. Visit our website, needlepointers.com, for lots of other Accuquilt tutorials. While you're there, sign up for our free newsletter so you won't miss new tutorials. Happy quilting!